Every Saturday we speak to Leith Van Onselen, Chief Economist at the MB Fund at MB Super, macrobusiness.com.au. Outstanding economic analysis right through the week, and I'm delighted to tell you that Mr Van Onselen, Leith, is on the line for our regular Saturday chat. Hello, my friend.
G'day, Luke. How are you?
I'm very well, mate. Very well indeed. Before we get into the issues of the day, we're going to talk about energy costs, and we're going to talk about the economic pain we're suffering. When you saw the inflation number through the week, did you instantly think, righto, the RBA will act in February, or what is your thought around that?
Yeah, look, I'd have to give it an 80% chance they'll cut rates, like very, very high chance. The underlying inflation, true mean inflation, that's the one that the RBA looks at once you strip out subsidies and volatile items, etc. That increased by only 0.5% in the December quarter, and the 6-month annualised rates, when you take the last 2 quarters, is now 2.65%. That's comfortably within the RBA's band, and it's important to note that Australia's underlying inflation is now below the United States and Canada, which are cutting rates. So most economists, and me included, think that the RBA will cut rates in the 18th February meeting. It's very, very likely. The only thing that could stop it is a low unemployment rate. And stupidly, Luke, I don't understand why this is, but 2 days after the next monetary policy meeting, the ABS releases the next labour force survey for January. And that sort of information would have been pretty handy before this meeting.
Yeah.
There is an outside chance the RBA might wait for that data, which would mean they could wait till April. But I think that's pretty unlikely. I think February's the most likely.
Yeah. I get a bit peed off when I see the Treasurer saying, "Oh, we've organised a soft landing and we've done this and we've done that," and I'm thinking to myself, "Hang on, mate, you haven't paid my much higher mortgage over the last couple of years, and anyone else with a loan who's had to tighten the belt in all sorts of areas." I mean, who's responsible for reducing inflation? Is it the RBA? Is it the government? Is it us mugs who've had to pay more for the money we borrowed? Who can claim the victory here?
Look, I think some of it's global factors, some of it's the RBA's doing. Not really. The government hasn't really done us any favours to reduce underlying inflation. I mean, they've obviously given out the energy subsidy and stuff to try and paper over their energy failures, but some of it's because we had that spike in costs after the pandemic, after COVID, which helped to drive up inflation globally. A lot of those costs are now dissipating. So pretty much anything that comes off a ship now. So you're talking about any tradable goods. So the stuff that you buy and shop that comes made in China and all those places, all that stuff's falling. The inflation's come right off that, and that's helping to lower inflation globally. So we had a spike after COVID, and a lot of it's coming back off, and inflation's falling around the globe, and that's been helped by obviously the very high interest rates we've had around the globe, which has stifled demand.
Now, mate, energy costs. In late 2021, Labor released its Powering Australia plan, which promised to cut the wholesale electricity costs by $11 per megawatt hour, from $62 to $51 by 2025. How's that going for us?
It's going really badly. So what you're referring to is the pre-election statement before last election. Labor said they're going to lower energy costs. We're going to lower it. We're going to reduce household power bills by $275 by 2025, and we're going to reduce them by $378 by 2030. Well, needless to say, they're failing. They're absolutely failing. So this week, the Australian reported that the cost of generating electricity across Australia's grid soared in the final 3 months of last year. And it said that the national electricity market cost of generating electricity rose to $88 per megawatt hour. Now, it's 72% higher than the level promised by Labor in their statement that they said that we'd have by 2025. So we're only at 72% higher, which is why we've all suffered these, higher costs, which the government's trying to paper over with its subsidies, which we're paying for through our taxes, may I add.
Yeah.
And, conveniently, Labor blamed the surge in utility bills on the global energy market crunch, which is fueled by Russia's invasion of Ukraine and obviously spiked energy costs globally.
And they love to talk about unreliable coal, don't they?
Oh, mate, it's pathetic. So,
Yes.
Australia's got an abundance of coal. We're the world's biggest coal exporter. We've got tons of the stuff. We've got abundance of gas. We're the world's second biggest gas exporter. We've always got heaps of sunlight. So the fact of the matter is, if we ran energy policy properly, we should be 100% insulated from global market forces. So to blame it on the Russia invading Ukraine is pretty pathetic. And, Labor's plan, fantastical plan, is to have renewables generate 82% of the nation's electricity by 2030. So, only 5 years away. And it claims that this will ultimately deliver lower power bills. Well, it won't, because to achieve that 82% rollout, we're going to have to spend tens and tens of billions, probably hundreds of billions of dollars on massive investment in transmission. And all those transmission costs go into the regulated asset price, which will then get added to our bills, which means that, residential power bills are going to continue to rise. And, Chris Bowen, Blackout Bowen, even had the audacity this week to attribute the rising costs in energy to the former coalition government. So he said that unreliable coal is behind the rise in electricity costs, even though for generations we had really cheap power based off coal. So, and he says that, if we bring more renewables into the grid, it's going to bring prices down, which is what its modelling has said, which is this pre-election modelling says, but the actual empirical evidence that we've lived through shows that this isn't the case. And every country around the world that has gone down this road has not had cheaper power. Their power bills are going up. And the reality of the situation is that an electricity system cannot function off intermittent and unreliable renewable power alone, and it needs backup from hydrocarbon power generation, so fossil fuels. And as we know, I've said it multiple times when I talk to you, Luke, the most flexible form of, backup power, firming power, comes from gas, because it can be ramped up and down very quickly, almost instantly.
Yep.
Whereas coal's really hard to sort of phase in and out. It's more of a slow burn process. But what we've done in Australia, I say it all the time, we haven't got a domestic reservation program on the East Coast. And what that's seen is that 3/4 of our East Coast gas is exported, mostly to China. And we opened up those export terminals about a decade ago. So before that, we had cheap gas. And then as soon as we opened up those export terminals without any domestic reservation, our gas prices surged. Then after Russia invaded Ukraine, they've surged even more. And it's gotten to the stage now where we're paying on the East Coast about, 3 to 4 times what Americans pay. And America's the biggest gas exporter. So Americans have got a reservation policy. They've got an America First policy. Americans pay about $2.50 US gigajoule, which is about $4 Australian, where we pay in the off-peak season on a good day $12, and some days it goes up to 20 a gigajoule. So, and just a few weeks back, the ACCC warned that Australia's southern states, so we're talking about New South Wales, Victoria and South Australia, are going to experience gas shortages over winter.
Yeah.
And despite these dire forecasts, I mentioned this a few weeks ago, I talked to you, Resource Minister Madeleine King refused to bring in the Australian Domestic Gas Security Mechanism, which is a reservation policy that was brought in under the Turnbull government.
Yeah.
And she basically ruled bring that in before winter. And what that does is that allows the government to force the East Coast Gas Cartel, which is foreign owned, to supply the domestic market. And she's refused to do that, even though the ACCC said we're going to have shortages. And Labor refused to trigger this after Russia invaded Ukraine and sent power prices soaring. And Labor's refusal to do this has basically handed more pricing power to the gas export cartel to keep gouging us. And it's gotten so stupid now, Luke, that now Australia's brainiac solution is to build import terminals. We've got one, it's going to ramp up soon in New South Wales. Another one's planned for Victoria. Another one's planned for South Australia. And as soon as we do that, Australia's East Coast gas price is going to surge even more. And the reason for that is we'll start importing gas at world prices, and the East Coast gas cartel will just cut back supply even more to the domestic market, and they'll allow the domestic price to rise to that, import price. And all this is going to do is it's going to lock in, permanently high gas prices, permanently high electricity prices. The Australian Energy Regulator is going to keep hiking its utility bills, its price setting. And it just means we're going to have this higher embedded inflation. The manufacturing sector is going to continue to shrink. We're going to have a less diversified economy. We're going to have upward pressure on inflation, you name it. It's just absolute energy idiocy here. And, it's brought about by shutting down, baseload reliable power that we had for generations, replacing it with intermittent sources that are expensive when you factor in transmission, lines, et cetera, that have to be built to accommodate them, and battery storage and all this other stuff costs heaps of money, pumped hydro, it's all very expensive. And then we've made the backup source for that, the prime backup source in gas, incredibly expensive, and we've made a domestic shortage. And now despite exporting 3/4 of our gas on the East Coast, we're now going to be importing it from overseas. This is just moron stuff.
That's exactly what it is. Mate, before you go, I've got to ask on behalf of Brenton, I'm taking the family to the USA for a once-in-a-lifetime trip. Any prediction re the Aussie dollar later in the year?
Look, it's probably. I mean, it's always a bit of a crapshoot with the currency, but I'd say it's probably going to fall a bit. So I'd probably almost be stocking up now on US dollars.
Right.
But it's at a pretty low level at the moment, unfortunately. So
yeah.
It's not the best time to go to the US, I'm afraid. But I guess you just do it when your life circumstances dictate.
All right, mate. Look after yourself. Thanks so much, Leith. I'll talk to you next week. Leith Van Onselen, macrobusiness.com.au.